Welcome to FightLine, brought to you in conjunction with Buy My Fight and Westbound Logistics Services. My name is Ben Doughty, and I'm slightly aggrieved this week not to be joined by the inimitable master knowledge, Spencer Fearon. But it's not all doom and gloom. I do have him on the line, I hope. Spencer, can you read me?
How you doing, Ben? My brother from another mother. How you doing, brother?
I'm great. You know, all's the worse for not seeing you on this occasion, Spence. But thanks to the wonders of modern technology, we can converse about the sweet science. I didn't have the best of weeks last week in terms of predictions. I said, in the singular scenario, I said that Billy Joe Saunders would stop his opponent, the unheralded Argentine Marcelo Esteban Caceres, but on my accumulator I decided to flip the script and say that Billy Joe would prevail on points. In any case, I picked rounds 7 to 9 for the stoppage scenario, as I believe you did. Billy Joe struggled a little bit as it turned out, but got the job done when it counted.
He did, but no, it's like it's kind of weird. It's like it's kind of the same scenario between like Billy Joe and Tyson Fury. Like the bet the opponent is the bet that they are.
I was saying this just the other day because Kenny Douglas, who's a big fan of the Facebook page, and he was saying, you know, I'm a painter and decorator. I bring the same amount of commitment to every job. A top fighter should bring his A game for everybody. But I was trying to reason with him and say, but that's just not the case, is it? It is historically well documented that certain fighters in particular only get up for their elite level opponents. But Ali fought despondently against Rudy Lubbers and then looked sensational against George Foreman, you know, shortly after that. We've seen it all the time. Exactly. Look at Bobby Ches, Evander Holyfield, and then the Mike Tyson historic upset.
Exactly. So. And history is decorated with things like this, so we can't look at that and say to ourselves, well, what will Billy Joe do? Right now, we could see Billy Joe going up against Canelo, and I think that's going to be a fight that's going to be easily made. And I think with the performance that he gave in on Saturday night, Canelo's camp said, yeah, we could drop down and pick up that belt as well.
Do you know, Spencer?
Yeah.
Some people have even suggested a degree of manipulation on Billy Joe's part, that he actually went out there to look beyond, you know, somewhere short of it awe-inspiring in order to tempt Canelo, because they believe that the Team Alvarez MO is to take guys who don't look $1 million last time out. I don't believe it is that calculated, but it has been suggested by some.
Well, you know what? Everybody likes to play devil's advocate when things like this happen. I don't know. Maybe it's in the hands of the gods, and maybe it's the fact that Billy Joe boxed the way that he did because he was just disinterested. Here was this guy, Carreras,
yep,
who knew anything about him. No one knew nothing about him. We didn't know what he's bringing to the table. And when it was time for Billy Joe to go and do the work, come on, man, he done the work. The stoppage was very, very impressive. The combinations that were put in, him going through the middle with the uppercuts was really nice. It's like from the beginning of like round one, I was saying, you know what, you could be using the uppercuts or utilizing the uppercuts, which he didn't. But when he did, he got the stoppage. So fair play to Billy Joe Saunders. Onwards and upwards for him. And I hope that he does get that big, massive fight against Canelo in the new year.
He did what a champion had to do when all said and done. And as you say, the finish at least was highlight reel, if not most of the performance. By his own words, he said, I hope you enjoyed the knockout because it turned out to be all I had to offer you tonight. Now, I know that you had some feelings, a wish to draw attention to the disparity of remuneration on the show. Obviously, people who were spinning it positively, including yourself, were saying that Billy Joe Saunders and Devin Haney could take advantage of a whole new audience with the phenomenon of the KSI and Logan Paul YouTube gamers grudge fight. More cynical people have suggested, you know, you didn't look great, you know, it's done more harm than good, and you end up playing second fiddle to these guys who, you know, they look like the kind of white-collar novices that they essentially are. But you were telling me that the vast difference in the actual purses for the fight was something that caught your eye.
Yeah, allegedly so. I heard that. I think Billy Joe got paid just under $1 million, whereas KSI and Logan Paul ended up with $10.5 million each.
$10.5 million, the pounds?
I have no idea. Regardless, 10.5, whatever it is, still a lot of money.
See, this is the thing, Spencer, and I mentioned this to you on the phone a little earlier today. I heard only from one source, and I don't know, you know, of the veracity of it, but I heard that they made £25 million apiece from the first fight, which they promoted themselves at the Manchester Arena. So it doesn't make sense to me that this next level sanctioned pro contest under the auspices of the mighty Matchroom and DAZN could have netted them, you know, while still a considerable sum, less than their first affair. Have you got any thoughts on that?
I don't. You know what? I would like to say that I do know something, but I don't. So if I would be speaking on it, I'll be speaking out of turn. I am speaking later on today to Shannon Briggs, so maybe he can put some light on the subject, and then I can report back to you. I can report back to you next week.
What I was going to say to you is, yeah, Shannon Briggs, I believe, I didn't know this until literally hours before the show started, but I believe Shannon Briggs was the trainer of, what, Logan? Was he trainer of Logan Paul or the other guy?
Yeah, Jay, you are that disinterested in that. Yeah, Shannon Briggs is the trainer of Logan Paul.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, you know, Shannon's gonna tell. He'll have something to tell us anyway.
So, well, okay, yeah. It seems fitting to me that Shannon Briggs should be involved with such a thing because he's been very much the kind of beneficiary of the new kind of dumbed down social media idiot culture with his rather irritating slogan. You know, so I feel it feels rather appropriate that he should have been involved in the mix of this somewhere. In the final analysis, Spencer, the reaction to it in the boxing community in the aftermath seems to have been largely negative, and to suggest that it, you know,
it has been, and that's maybe because like we've had people that try to sell this fight, and that's my little daughter trying to get into the mix there. Right?
Yeah, does she have a nickname yet? Master Knowledge, is that Baby Knowledge?
Yeah, she does. And her nickname's Ray Ray. That's what we call her. Her name's Ray, but we call her Ray Ray. So she's trying to get up onto the camera as well. But
she will surpass you in time. But carry on.
Oh, without a doubt. You know what I mean? Just like your little troopers will. But no, if we look on Shannon Briggs has been, you know, he ain't fought in a little while. And no doubt he would have got paid well for taking on that job.
Yeah.
And it is a job. But Shannon Briggs is very, very passionate about it as well. Because I didn't watch the full fight, to tell you the honest truth. I watched highlights of that fight because I couldn't take myself to watch it. And that's no disrespect to the two guys that went in there and fought. But I'm saying within the recent times where we've had deaths in boxing, and most recently of Patrick Dane, of him passing away, it's like we've got to really take this thing seriously. So what I'm not going to take, I think it's a good thing because you're bringing eyeballs to the sport. But Devin Haney boxed well, but it wasn't oh my gosh, this was incredible kind of performance. No. And neither did Billy Joe Saunders. And I think they missed out on a very, very good opportunity to capitalize on all the eyeballs being on that event.
It's interesting when you talk about Devin Haney versus Alfred Santiago, because I did say last week on the show that I believe it was something like 8-1 for Haney to get extended over the full distance, which I said would be a hell of a price if anybody thought that Santiago's height and, you know, survival skills might see him to the final bell. He did. I missed the trick with that one, but I didn't know too much about Santiago, and I figured that the stoppage at some point was the safer bet. I got that one wrong as well.
Yeah, but you know what? We could be experts all we want. But like you can't call the weather every day neither. So it's just one of those things. But I would have looked on that, and I don't think your bet was a wrong bet. I don't think your decision or what you thought about was a wrong thing. I thought it was quite. I think I went with the same as you, to tell you the truth. So yeah, that's how I saw it as well. But Devin Haney he's still a special talent. Very, very good fighter.
Remind me, Spence, there was one other fight. I picked Billy Joe Saunders by stoppage.
A Nui.
Oh, of course. That threw me. That threw me. I forgot it because.
The fight of the year.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
It was a fantastic fight. It restored anyone's faith that needed restoring in boxing at its finest. Donaire confounded not just ourselves, but almost everybody in the game by. You couldn't argue that he won the fight, but it was so competitive, so compelling, and he proved that he's got great skills and a chin of pure cast iron.
You know what? I don't know what's going on because we've seen him lose in the past. We've seen him get knocked out in the past, right? So
We have, and then and they always say that the one thing an old fighter doesn't retain is his chin. You know, he may retain his power.
Some strange reason, he just reversed that. He boxed really well. He had good successes in rounds. Hurt Anui a couple of times. Anui came back in being the younger and the more fresher fighter, even though it's cliche, but it's the actual truth. He was the younger, more fresher of the two.
Sure.
And you know what? We've had. 2019's been an excellent year for boxing, where we've had some really excellent competitive fights.
We have. The diehards can't complain too much. They may get annoyed about the title confetti situation, and obviously things like YouTube gamers making, legendary sums of money for something which is being, John West tuna sold as caviar. But the fact is, if we focus on the positives, we've seen a lot of great fights, particularly in the second half of 2019. On the subject of Inoue, I know some of the more negative types once again were trying to suggest that he was shown to be not quite as awesome as we may have thought. I don't believe that. I think Inoue awesome. Rose in stature as well.
I'm in agreement with you, my friend. I'm in total agreement with you, Ben. Like, Inoue is a monster. But what it is like when you're an old warrior, there's something deep down inside of you that you can muster, and that's what Nonito Donaire did. We were speaking last week, and you were saying like you interviewed him when you were in Vegas and what a nice guy. And
I wasn't actually in Vegas, Spence. I was in Chorley Wood, and it was on the phone, although it doesn't sound half as glamorous, admittedly.
Oh, you spoke. You should have stuck with my story, Ben.
Debunking.
But, he is. Yeah, but he's a proper nice guy, and Inoue seemed like a very nice man because it was like Nonito Donaire said he promised his kids that.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Ali trophy.
Yeah. Beautiful lovely story. He said he basically promised to his kids, tomorrow I will show you the Muhammad Ali trophy. This is Donaire, and he said because he didn't win, so he didn't procure the Muhammad Ali trophy. He asked Inoue, could he borrow it just for a day? He said, not for me, but for my word. And I thought that was fantastically touching little epithet.
It was. But you know what? Good things happen to good people. Regardless if he didn't get the win, he got a moralistic win in that fight because everyone was saying, "Now you're done. We've seen you lose in fights. We've seen you lose to Carl Frampton. We see you get horribly knocked out by Nicholas Waters. We're thinking you're done." And then for him to drop 2 weight divisions down and put in a performance like that, there's life in the old dog yet.
The old axiom that every great fighter has one less great performance in him, perhaps?
Well, he had a great performance, but he could still stick around and fight at that division and pick up a world title.
I share your optimism regarding the future trajectory of the Filipino flesh. Moving on to a relatively quiet week on the boxing front, Spence, we do at least have a rather mouth-watering domestic bantamweight clash at the Glasgow Emirates Arena between British champion Kash Farooq and Commonwealth champion Lee McGregor. Thoughts?
Yeah, it is a good fight. What's one guy? What's Farouk's record?
They haven't had a lot of fights between them, Spence. Farooq is 13-0, but he's already made the Lonsdale belt his own property with 3 defences in a relatively short period of time. And McGregor is only 7-0, having won the Commonwealth title vacant against the obligatory unimposing African from Cameroon, and made a defence against Scott Allen back in the summer, in which he looked reasonably impressive, won by 8th round stoppage. So the edge in experience, such as it is, goes to the British champion Farooq. But between them, they had less than 20.
He's from Glasgow, isn't he? Scottish kid, right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, he's Pakistani and Scottish.
Right. I rate him because when you said, it's this fight coming up. And he's with my guys, MTK Global. They're our family. So I watched a couple of his fights, and he's very skillful as well. So
he's a pressure fighter, but he does have finesse. That's one thing. He has fantastic head movement.
Yeah.
He has great balance. He's got good head movement. He's a hurtful puncher. I would say he's a box fighter. And when you look at superlative examples where that style was perhaps informed by, you look at guys, great fighters like Julio Cesar Chavez and Roberto Duran, who had plenty of finesse and defensive guile, but they were on a mission. They wanted to come forward and they wanted to hurt you. And Farooq looks like he's got a lot of that. He has 2 first-round stoppages in his Lonsdale belt winning run, most recently against Dwayne Winters, the unfancied fighter from Gloucester last time out. And to me, Spencer, it looked like McGregor is a lot taller than Farooq, but officially Farooq is given as around 5'5", with McGregor only 5'7.5". But I tell you what, he looks a very tall 5'7.5" to me.
Hey, listen, you look on him, he's like he looks like a Tommy Hearns kind of figure. He's very, very
sure.
Yeah. So,
sometimes there's height advantage, Spencer, and sometimes there is height disadvantage. Mike Tyson always famously said that he loved to fight big, tall guys and guys who like to jab at him because that made him vulnerable to his particular explosive attack and aggressive counter-punching. That's what I feel might happen in terms of a blueprint stylistically for this fight. I think that Farooq is likely to come forward. I think McGregor is going to stand up and box. You would imagine he wants to keep him at range, but I think Farooq is very effective coming forward. He's great at slipping a shot and rolling underneath a shot, and I think he will look to attack the body and to grind him down to some extent. Is that the way you see it unfolding?
Yeah, I do, and I can see in a hard fight, because when we get 2 unbeaten fighters going at each other who are relatively inexperienced, we're either going to get a really good fight, like we got with James Aguel versus George Groves, or we're going to get a stinker, like we got with Lawrence Okoli when he fought Isaac Chamberlain.
I mean, some people criticised Eddie Hearn for putting that on the big stage so early, the British Beef fights at the O2, which we both attended last year. You know, and as it happened, it sucked. Okoli has been criticised a lot in any case for being not exactly the human highlight reel a la Matthew Saad Muhammad in his pomp. But, you know, I think it's a good thing. What Boxing News referred to this particular fight between Farooq and McGregor as domestic bliss. And I think some people are pleasantly surprised in this era when young up-and-coming fighters who have a lot to lose are willing to fight each other at the earliest, instead of this obsession with marinating a fight till sometimes it goes off the boil past its sell-by date, one of them gets beat and it suddenly becomes irrelevant. These guys want to do it, and they're going to have this, you know, dual title fight. Somebody presumably has to lose, although we will look at the odds on a draw, of course, and I know Chris Tate, a big fan of my Facebook page, fancies that scenario. But, you know, it's good to see young fighters wanting to take each other on, step up to the plate and test themselves. You know, I'll give you an example. I saw Barry Jones, my otherwise co-anchor, sometimes on FightLine, had a post on his Facebook page yesterday when he looked at the BoxRec rankings, and actually Lukman Prince Patel is ranked above both of these guys on BoxRec in the British bantamweight rankings. They were 1, 2 and 3, and he said, in what universe is Prince Patel even in the same stratosphere as these two, let alone above him? That's a BoxRec thing, and we could talk about that all day. Go on.
One second. I rate Barry Jones. Barry Jones shouldn't even waste his breath and speak about that kid.
I know it's like a resentment to an extent, because I remember when it was popular for people to tag Barry in social media posts by Prince Patel, he said it really pisses me off that my name is forever linked with that kid. You know, that you know, spurious presence as he is. But he is promoting that to an extent when he does that. You know, admittedly, I think Barry, you know, who generally is above it, would probably be best served by not mentioning it, like you say. But he did mention it, and you know, I think Prince Patel, who is a friend of mine and somebody I know from the gym, but nonetheless, he does have that very kind of non-fighter type psyche where he just looks at the BoxRec rankings game, he understands the system intricately, he plays it accordingly, and that's why you get a silly situation like this. But when you look at the actual credible situation, these two guys both hold major titles and they're fighting each other now on Saturday night, you know, in their home country, and I think it's laudable.
And like I said, I'm not going to call that young fellow's name, because he doesn't deserve me to speak of his name. until he does something. That's number one.
I'll tell you one thing, Spencer, he's good for views. I actually did invite him on today because I knew you were going to be in absentee over the phone. I hope we've got a fittingly fetching image of you so the viewers don't forget how absurdly handsome you are. But I did ask Lukeman Prince Patel if he would like to come on and give me his opinion on this because it's relevant to him. I didn't actually get a reply the other day, so I'm guessing that's a no. But one thing I will say about Lukeman, rightly or wrongly, is in this, like I say, this dumbed-down idiot social media culture, which I referred to a little earlier, Shannon Briggs, Lukeman does translate to views for whatever reason because people like to see this kind of that kind of bombast. I think I'm not going to turn this into Lukeman Prince Patel show. Don't worry.
Yeah, well, you mentioned him. Yeah. Like I mentioned the kid. I wish him all the best in his career. But let's be real. You know what I mean? We've got a genuine 50-50 fight on the weekend. Yeah. And if you're picking more to do with emotional alignment than anything else, because it's very difficult to pick a winner. I've watched both guys fight, and they're very, very good.
They are, yeah, it's true. And this is ultimately what it's all about. When you get, whether it's for a title or 2 titles or no titles, if you get a well-matched fight, and like, as you said, we've seen a tumult of that in the second half of 2019, and it's not over yet. This is what turns us on, and this is what I ultimately believe creates new fans more than any degree of gimmickry in the world. Now, let's have a look at the prices, Spencer. On this occasion, you won't be able to see them, but I promise to talk you through them so you're up to speed as if you were here.
Thank you very much, bro.
Okay, these odds come from Bet365 this week. Lee McGregor is the slight underdog at 6-4. So from the straight win perspective, you're going to get better value for your money if you fancy McGregor to win and you lump on him. Cash Farooq is 1-2. So clearly he is an odds-on favourite there. To win by KO, this is the interesting bit, Spencer, that I want to draw your attention to. I've been told I can point at the screen this week, so I'm going to do that. I've been given the opportunity, I'm going to do it. You've got identical odds. This is the interesting thing, Spencer. Even though Farooq is the favourite for the straight win, you've got 4-1 on McGregor to win by KO in any round, and you have the identical price of 4-1 by Farooq. Now that's of great interest to me because I do fancy the Pakistani-born Scot, and I do think he is likely, perhaps, to prevail inside the distance. And for me, it's fantastic value to go from 1-2 to 4-1. If you fancy McGregor, you get the same thing. On points, Spence, if you bet on McGregor to win via decision or technical decision, you can get 15-4 from Bet365, which is a nice price. It's better than way better than the 6-4 on the straight win. To get Farooq on points, you can get evens. It's represented here on Bet365 by 1-1, which clearly is a scenario they think is more plausible than the KO win for Farooq. The draw, or the technical draw, is 18-1. I know I'd mentioned to you earlier that Chris Tate is interested in that price. He fancies that, and I know you can get wider odds because I looked at Sky Bet and they've got 25-1 on the draw. What are you making of all that, Spence? I realise you're not here, you're not looking at the screen, but if you've got McGregor 6-4 to win, or 15-4 on points, or 4-1 by KO, or perhaps you fancy going the other side. Entirely theoretically, if I was to give you,
I'm going the other side, and I'm going for Farooq. Between.
Go on. Let's get those round group betting odds up as you speak, Spencer. Keep going.
Yeah, between 7 and 9 rounds.
7 and 9 rounds. I was tempted at that. You know what you would get, sir, for that bet? You would get 12-1. You can get 12-1 on both fighters in round 7 to 9, so that's pretty equitable.
Well, then I'll be going for that one, mate.
Okay. I'm wondering as well, because see, to me, that whole in any close even fight, that whole late stoppage scenario does seem like a bit of a cliche. People say, "Oh, I fancy such and such late," and it becomes something that just tends to roll off the tongue. And there's not always a lot of knowledge and analysis behind some of these picks. But I do think, I think Farooq is a grinder. I think they will be, quite even, and it will be a bit of a chess match in the early going. But I think he is a grinder. He's a good body puncher. He's got a good arsenal offensively. He throws good punches downstairs. As does, McGregor on occasion, by the way, when he has a mind. I mean, he stopped Scott Allen with essentially with a body shot in 8 rounds back in June. But, I think he is a grinder. I think he stands a decent chance of grinding McGregor down. I may be tempted then. You know what? Somebody told me the other day that we should always go against each other no matter what, because then there's a better chance of one of us being right. That was the logic. Not necessarily informed by that, but what I will say is I'm going to go a little bit later on this occasion, Spencer, and I'm going to tip Farooq to retain his British title and pick up the Commonwealth strap from rounds 10 to 12, which I've got a better price of 18 to 1 on. So you're going Farooq rounds 7 to 9.
12 to 1.
12 to 1. Well done, well remembered. You know, when it comes to matters of mathematics and money, you're not found wanting, are you? Screen or no screen?
No, never ever. Never ever.
Never ever. I'm going with the 18 to 1 price on Farooq, rounds 10 to 12. And that kind of brings us to a wrap this time. You know, it's going to be a bigger week next week, Spence, where we've got Wilder versus Ortiz. And I would like to think we had your, singular presence back in the studio by then.
Next week I'll be here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this occasion.
Man, thanks for having me, Ben.
Always a pleasure.
All right, mate. Take care. God bless.
Thanks for tuning in. We will be back next week, as I said, previewing Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz, the rematch, to see if King Kong can finish what he started. Don't forget our wonderful sponsors, Buy My Fight, helping professional fighters sell tickets online. In the meantime, be lucky and keep punching.